We are almost halfway to the playoffs in fantasy football. You got to save your team if you are in trouble right now. And if you are on top of the world, you got to stay on top of the world. Here's what to do with all the hottest players in fantasy football, starting with Rico Dowdle. I mean, talk about hottest players in fantasy football. I mean, the dude is doing something that, like, I didn't even know this guy. I was not familiar with your game, Rico Dowdle. Now, let's consider two things here. Number one, he played Miami in week 5. Number 2, he played Dallas in week 6. Two of the best matchups possible for running backs in fantasy football this season. And Rico Dowdle gets him in the only 2 weeks that Chuba Hubbard misses. But you can't really deny with Rico Dowdle, who's scored 32 and 33 points in back-to-back weeks. He's gotten all the volume. He's had 206 and 183 rushing yards. And then also, again, only one rushing touchdown against Miami, 1 receiving touchdown against Dallas. Also 4 and 5 targets in that game. I mean, I don't quite know what to say here. And the reason is this. Chuba Hubbard was the lead back going into this year. They brought Rico Dowdle in. Nobody batted an eye at Rico Dowdle. I didn't think Rico Dowdle was going to be anything, even though he did have a solid year last year in Dallas, but I didn't think he was going to do squat in this offense. And Chuba is hurt. I think he probably comes back here in week 7. They don't have their bye week this year until week 14, and so we're not even having that conversation yet. But really, the speculation and the conversation is going to be about Rico Dowdle and whether or not he just straight up takes the running back 1 role from Chuba Hubbard. Realistically, I don't think this is likely. I think the more likely scenario here is that they come back and Chuba. Look, the Panthers are kind of screwed here because they paid Chuba Hubbard a pretty good contract here. And, you know, you don't really invest in a running back like that. It's a 4-year, $33 million deal. You don't really invest in a running back like that and not use him immediately after you paid him. And it's not that Chuba's been bad this year. Chuba has been banged up, but there have been games also from a fantasy perspective. Sure, he's not been great, but from a real-life NFL perspective, he's been fine in a situation that's just not been ideal. But the most surprising thing about the Rico Dowdle emergence is that he's doing this behind a banged-up offensive line. So you've seen them in 2 identical situations. You have seen Rico Dowdle outperform Chuba Hubbard. It's all going to depend on where people move Rico Dowdle in their rankings. And right now, Rico Dowdle on the Flock Expert consensus as of Monday afternoon is the running back 31, and you still have Chuba Hubbard as the running back 24, which means that Rico Dowdle is still significantly cheaper than those guys. He's next to guys like Kamani Vidal, Tony Pollard, Woody Marks, Travion Henderson, Zach Charbonnet, Ramondre Stevenson. Also keep in mind, in the games before Chuba Hubbard was hurt, he did have a 10-point game against Atlanta because he had a touchdown. He was starting to cut into some of the red zone work there. But the reality is what I kind of see happening here in Carolina. If Chuba Hubbard stays hurt and you want to bet, I mean, Chuba Hubbard I think has a calf injury, right? If you want to bet that Chuba Hubbard doesn't return, then maybe that's your best bet for buying Rico Dowdle. But I'm scared of this. Because what was happening in the couple weeks where he got respectable snap share, actually, he has had above 30% snap share in every single one of his games. And so when you're looking at the first 4 weeks when it was Chuba and Rico Dowdle, Rico wasn't irrelevant in the sense that he had 10, 4, 3, and 2 fantasy points and was getting 3, 6, 10, and 9 attempts. And Chuba was relevant but wasn't good enough, and Rico was capping his ceiling. I'm scared in an offense that is not as bad as people think it is, but still not great, that this is going to turn into the Seattle Seahawks. That's what I'm scared of here.
Rip.
And realistically, I think that's why, you know, everybody on the site, including us, is going to be very conservative, ranking both Chuba and Rico Dowdle. But right now, I've got them ranked back-to-back. I don't know what's going to happen.
Right by Kenneth Walker, ironically.
I know. I have these guys back-to-back. I don't know what's going to happen with them. You should let us know in the comments what you think is going to happen with them. Realistically, I think if you can get Rico Dowdle for cheap, you know, even if you can get him for 1 week, he's going to win you a week. So how much are you going to pay for a week? But, like, I'm not giving up any, like, significant, hey, this is an every-week starter to get Rico Dowdle. But I don't think anybody is because there are not any of those players that are going around Rico Dowdle at this point. And so he may be worth a buy. I don't know. I'm going to go with Rico Dowdle. If you got him, you kind of I think you have to hold Rico Dowdle. I don't think I'm seeking out buying him because I'm scared of what the future looks like. But I'm also not selling him because anytime he's a starter, you know, you're going to have him in your lineup. He's going to have a good week, obviously. Or you hold him because you think that he is going to cut into Chuba Hubbard's workload rest of the year. So I'm going to say hold for Rico Dowdle here.
I'm with you. I think I would go hold as well. I know it's kind of a cop-out because people want us to predict what we think Rico Dowdle's rest of the season outlook is going to be when Chuba comes back healthy, and us just say it's going to be this guy or that guy. And I don't think there's anything indicating that it has to be this guy or that guy. It could realistically just be both. And that really does suck for both of these players. I don't think you're going to see 30-plus point games from Rico Dowdle once Chuba's back healthy. I could be crazy. I could be wrong. I mean, you saw productive weeks for Rico Dowdle last season as a bell cow for Dallas, though. But that was as a bell cow when he was the only guy essentially left available there. So we'll see what happens this season with Rico. Time will tell, and maybe he ends up becoming a buy low for us if he gets really good volume but doesn't have a 30-point game. He only has like 10 points, but he gets like 15 plus carries. Then maybe we'll kind of change our outlook and our opinion on him long term. Next guy that we've got here is Ladd McConkey. I want to talk about him again. We've had plenty of talks about Ladd. I know people are probably sick of it at this point, but this is relevant because there are a couple of bits of news that we didn't necessarily know about when we've talked about Ladd over the last couple of weeks. Number one, a couple of weeks ago, sorry, I panicked way too hard on Ladd McConkey. I will say, though, we didn't know that Omarion Hampton was going to go on IR. And now, with him going on IR, missing 4 weeks, we didn't know that there was going to be another announcement that came out and said, hey, so Hampton, don't freak out. Don't freak out. Hampton's not done for the season, but he's probably going to be out for a while. So that does change the outlook for this Chargers offense. Not only do you have a hobbled offensive line, you now have a hobbled Omarion Hampton where who knows when he's going to be back healthy and ready to go. And this does bode really well for the wide receivers in that offense, specifically Ladd McConkey. QJ also is injured. QJ also has a hamstring issue right now. I don't think that QJ necessarily would have fallen off a cliff over the last couple of weeks if he hadn't gotten banged up in the middle of last week's game.
No.
But that is a huge, huge case for why Ladd McConkey has been moving up both of our rankings and his resurgence finally, which took quite a while. Justin Herbert, I don't think it's by chance that he had 38 pass attempts in the first game with no Omarion Hampton. I know he had 47-41 against Denver and the Giants in weeks 3 and 4, but against Miami with 38 pass attempts, he's got the Colts next week. Ladd is going to absolutely cook the Colts. We're definitely going to lose that game. And then he's got Minnesota, Tennessee, and then Pittsburgh after that. So the next 3 weeks for Herbert from a passing volume perspective and for Ladd McConkey specifically, I think this does indicate that he's going to have a pretty solid next few weeks. His target volume did go up a little bit. He had 9 targets, which matched the max that he has had this season against Kansas City in week 1, 9 targets that week as well. But 23 points, he hauled in another touchdown second straight week. I don't think it's by chance that this production resurgence has come with him getting touchdowns. And that is why, like, when you're talking about his rest of season ranking, where we have him among wide receivers, I haven't gotten super aggressive with Ladd yet. I mean, I moved him down quite a bit when he wasn't producing. I've moved him back up to the same tier as like Debo, Mike Evans, Olave, Devonta Smith, DK Metcalf, that low-end wide receiver 2, high-end wide receiver 3 range where they're going to have high upside and some low floor games. And I do think Ladd McConkey kind of belongs right there with these guys still. Even with Omarion Hampton being injured long-term, you saw Kamani Vidal come in, get a ton of work, and he was very productive, had 20-plus points. I don't think Vidal is going to have 20-plus points every single week, but again, I do think this work and Keenan Allen's lack of getting touchdowns, like this is essentially flipped where Keenan Allen is now what Ladd was the first 5 weeks and Ladd is now what Keenan was. And it's because the touchdowns and the usage there in the red zone is flipped. Mm-hmm. So I think whoever scores the touchdowns in this offense any given week is going to be the one that's the most productive. I think you're probably still looking at the same type of situation. So again, I'll reinforce, while we moved him up our rankings, we're still going to be a little bit careful with Ladd here. Even though he looks really, really solid. I would lean hold with Ladd McConkey right now. I don't think I'm going and hard buying Ladd because there are a ton of moving pieces over the next month and a half when Hampton comes back. If Vidal is going to maintain this workload and this production, is QJ going to be as productive as he was before he got injured? Or will he kind of fall back down to the QJ that we knew in the first 2 seasons of his career? Is Keenan Allen going to continue to be a non-factor like he has been the last couple of weeks in terms of like high-end production? A lot of questions there, a lot of unknowns. I think time will tell if Ladd McConkey can sustain this.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with Ladd, we had Ladd as a sell last week, and if QJ wouldn't have missed time, then I think it would have panned out. Obviously, if we had known Quentin Johnson was going to miss the game, we wouldn't have told you to sell Ladd. You just can't predict injury.
Right.
But realistically, my opinion on Ladd hasn't really changed. I'm definitely more comfortable soft selling him than I am buying him, like for sure.
Yeah, I'm definitely not buying.
And realistically, like, I think with all 3 of those wide receivers healthy in that offense, I think it's going to be anybody any given week. And I just think you have to evaluate Ladd for what he is. This is what Ladd was last year. He's not this year because you have 3 viable options now in that offense who are going to split touchdowns and split targets and split yak and things like that. And because of that, you have to evaluate Ladd as somebody who is a lot more volatile and boom or bust with a lot lower floor than he had last year, and you have to rank him accordingly. Again, I've moved him up my rankings a little bit, but at this point in the season, I really only move guys within tiers. Like, I've got Ladd in his tier that I think he's going to be in the rest of the season. I've moved him up within that tier. I moved T. Higgins up in that tier because he had a better game with Joe Flacco and because I think it's a better situation for him. But I still lean hold or soft sell for Ladd McConkey. My opinion hasn't really changed in the fact that if after this week you can get a good price for him because people are like, oh, he's back, then sure. And obviously if QJ misses time, Ladd becomes a very good fantasy starting asset. But if QJ's playing, man, I still think you're going to see single-digit weeks for Ladd McConkey. I hope, though. I hope that he does kind of rebound it here and get back to where he was. Patrick Mahomes. Man, I'll tell you what. I got so much crap from people when I drafted Mahomes in the Flock draft vlog. I drafted Mahomes in the 9th, and I said, this is why you go 0 QB. I got the best quarterback in the NFL, and I got him in the 9th round, and I was pumped about it. And people looked at me like I was the biggest idiot of all time. Oh, what's he excited about? Patrick Mahomes? He's literally, like, what? Patrick Mahomes? Is this guy dumb? Yeah, this guy has the number 1 overall player in fantasy football right now. Because I drafted Patrick Mahomes in the 9th round. He should have never been going there. And realistically, everybody knows that the last couple, here's what people fail to understand with Patrick Mahomes. Our expectations for him were so dramatically high after the 5-season stretch from 2018 to 2022, where he was a top 5 quarterback all but 1 season in that stretch, and he was their
understandably
quarterback.
So.
And the quarterback 7 outside of that. In 2023, quarterback 8. In 2024, the quarterback 11. And I know good and well that wasn't good enough for Patrick Mahomes. And the reality is he has 4 rushing touchdowns so far this year, and that's the most he's ever had in his career, tied for 2022, and he's played 6 games. And I know that. But here's the thing about Patrick Mahomes. This is an offense where they don't really have any good running backs, and they failed to get a running game going, besides Patrick Mahomes and his legs, by the way. And he does have that in his game. Patrick Mahomes has run for 222 yards this year. He ran for 307 all of last year. And so at some point, you looked at the first game, you're like, okay, yeah, it's a fluke. You look at the second game, you're like, yeah, maybe it's a fluke. I think maybe you should stop looking at it as like, oh, this is a fluke, and more look at it as like, oh, this guy could give you anywhere from 5 to 10 points rushing on the ground every single week at this point, and it not be fluky. The thing about the Chiefs, like I was going to say, is they're an offense that is going to be in every game, that schematically they just, between Mahomes and between their play calling, which has been better this year, by the way, they're just an offense that is going to be dangerous from a fantasy perspective every week. And what people aren't, I don't think, grasping is that this is an offense that is going to be trying to put up a lot of points to win their games, that can't run the ball. And so it's either Mahomes is producing or Mahomes is producing. Whereas in the past, they had a Jerick McKinnon, and they had, whoever else, and Pacheco was better, and he wasn't cheeks. They could run the ball, and then, and they got in the red zone, they just ran, touchdown. But you'll notice every time they get into the red zone this year, what are they doing? They're passing the ball. They're passing the ball, and as a result, Patrick Mahomes' touchdowns this year, he had 3 touchdowns against Detroit, he had 4 against Baltimore, and he's had 1 each of his other games.
And guess what? That's not going to stop with Rasheed. Once Rasheed is back, it's game over.
And so, look, I'm not telling you to buy Patrick Mahomes. You'd be buying it at probably his peak here. And do I think he's the number 1 QB rest of the season? No. I think realistically, I would still take Josh Allen over him. Lamar, when Lamar's healthy, of course, I would take Lamar over Patrick Mahomes. But in terms of Jaden Daniels, Jalen Hurts, and Patrick Mahomes, I think all of those guys are in the same tier now. If you have Patrick Mahomes, I'm going to say hold. I'm not going to say buy because I think you'd have to overpay to get somebody whose name is more popular than anybody else's in the NFL, especially in home and casual leagues. But it is worth acknowledging, Patrick Mahomes has been exactly what we wanted him to be from a fantasy perspective, and pretty much nobody's acknowledging it. He has been very good this year.
I mean, with no one acknowledging it, that's why I would at least explore offers for Patrick Mahomes if you are in a league where someone is expecting Patrick Mahomes regression back to what he's been doing the last
sharper
couple of
leagues
years.
You can get him.
So I would go soft buy, honestly, for Patrick Mahomes, and this will be very dependent on your league and how they value that guy. So I guess we'll see what you can get. I would love to hear in the comments, like, hey, if you could trade for Patrick Mahomes in your league, what did you give up to acquire him? And I guess we'll determine by that price range to see if he's going to actually be a buy over the next couple of weeks or more of a hold. Next guy that we've got here is Derrick Henry. We had Derrick Henry last week as a buy in the buys video. Looks pretty decent because he had like 100+ rushing yards again. Finally. He definitely looks to be back. They finally were like, oh my gosh, Derrick Henry, you're still here, and we literally don't have anybody else left on this roster that's healthy. Let's just give him the ball, feed him the ball, see if we can survive the day. And hey, they didn't get humiliated by the Rams. They just lost by a couple possessions and didn't score any touchdowns on the day. But he had 24 carries, 122 yards, and no touchdowns. Still, with that volume and that work on the ground, had 14 points on the day. When you saw the last couple of weeks, he saved his days from getting a touchdown because he was so inefficient and wasn't getting any volume on the ground that you're used to seeing for Derrick Henry. This was the complete opposite, where they really just, it's not like they waved the white flag on the day, but they're like, we need to get Derrick Henry back to what he was before this terrible rut of a month of really bad football, so that he's ready to go. He's in a groove once Lamar is back healthy after this bye week in week 7. And again, I want to reinforce the schedule that they have over the next few weeks. You've got Chicago, Miami, Minnesota over the next 3 weeks after the bye. Those 3 run defenses are not very good, to put it nicely. And when you look at how they had to start this season against Buffalo, good run defense, Cleveland, best run defense, Detroit, solid run defense, Kansas City, solid run defense, Houston, and the Rams, and you stack all the injuries on top with no Lamar in like 2.5 of those games, you're really looking at like it being understandable why Derrick Henry didn't produce at a high level. Again, you would have expected more and a higher floor, but I would expect some high upside games in the near future for Derrick Henry, where I would still lean soft buy for him, where as opposed to being like a sell or anything like that. With Lamar coming back healthy, you're going to see a new dimension unlocked again for this offense. Hopefully they can make a run, and they're going to have a couple of guys on the defensive side of the ball coming back healthy as well, who will be really key guys there that should hopefully keep the scoreboard down less than what it has been through the first 6 weeks of the year. And I mean, they kept the Rams to 17, 20 points that day with literally like no one playing. So that was a good sign as well, where I think they should be able to figure it out and at least be competitive long term.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk about Tataroa McMillan here real quick. If you would like to get our rest of season rankings in their entirety, also you can use our trade calculator, and you can use our My Teams tool, where you can plug in your team, see where you rank for the rest of the season, and see if you're a true playoff contender or if you're the champion of your league so far. You can check it out. I've got the link in the pinned comment. Create a free account with code DOMAIN when you sign up. And again, it doesn't cost anything. You just create the account, and then you have access to use the tool. So go check it out and win your fantasy leagues. I've got the link down there, pinned in the comments section. So he comes out in week 6, Tataroa McMillan does, and he posts his lowest target volume of the season and his lowest receptions of the season. And it's like,
and he has a touchdown.
And then he has a touchdown. And then he has another.
Yay.
And it's like, oh. So really, 17.9 points. Obviously, touchdowns will get you your highest point total ever of your career in fantasy football. You just need to see it happen at the same time. And you're going to see it happen at the same time, in my opinion. Look, this Carolina Panthers team is not as bad as people make them out to be. They're now 3-3. And I know their schedule hasn't necessarily been taxing up to this point. But I also think they have some cupcakes still the rest of the year. They're playing in a division with New Orleans, which they play them twice in the year. They've already played Atlanta once, but they play Atlanta again, and they were competitive in that game as well. You've got the Jets obviously are the Jets, and so that's going to be a good game for them as well. You've got some tough games in there, like the Packers and like the Rams, but. This is a rookie wide receiver that has looked fantastic through his first couple weeks. We've been screaming at you to buy him, and now you do have to realize a lot of times with rookie wide receivers, they get better in their second half of their first season. Like they actually end up coming on and looking better. And he's gotten the target volume. Yesterday he turned in his limited targets into touchdowns. I'm still broken record. I'll still say I think he's going to be somebody who wins you leagues at the end of the year. I still go soft buy for Ted McMillan. I think he's putting it together week by week, and when the target volume meets the touchdowns, you're going to have a guy scoring a ton of points. I mean, the dude's already a wide receiver 2 in fantasy football. He's the wide receiver 22. Now, he is being ranked accordingly. I will say that. And so, I don't think he's like, oh, he's such a buy because he's, blah, blah, blah. He's wide receiver 16 expert average on the site. So, I don't think anybody's, shorting Ted McMillan. So you could say he's a hold for that reason if you want to, but realistically, I just think that in a lot of home and casual leagues, you can still get this guy because he's not a household name yet, because he's been good but not great. And I think he has a possibility to be great at the end of the season. He looks like the focal point of that offense most weeks. I wish he would have gotten more targets in a game against Dallas, so it was very high scoring, but regardless, I still think he's going to be somebody I would go hold or soft sell for T-Mac.
Jake Ferguson is he kind of came back down to earth in terms of his target volume this week, but he still salvaged his day with a touchdown. So 6-12, 14-7, 9 targets first 5 weeks of the season, 3 targets against Carolina, only 33 yards and a TUD. So 12 points still had a solid day. But again, you don't want to depend on those weeks where the target volume is going to go down and he has to salvage it with a touchdown. You would like to see that volume be more of what you saw through the weeks 2 to 5 stretch. And with CeeDee Lamb coming back healthy, that obviously is in question. We've already had the discussion about George Pickens and what we think that outlook is going to be for him when CeeDee is back healthy. And Ferguson, I think we're pretty optimistic that he's going to be able to maintain this volume because, again, when you look at what Dak has done on a weekly basis here, he had, again, 34 pass attempts this week against Carolina. He's at 52, 40, and 40 against the Giants, Chicago, and Green Bay in weeks 2 through 4. Like, this is the passing volume upside that you have for Dak Prescott, literally upwards of like 50-plus pass attempts a game. And you're probably going to settle like on a per-game basis for the rest of the season, probably in the 40s. And that is a good sign for every receiving asset in that offense. But will Jake Ferguson be able to maintain this consistent double-digit production that he's done for 5 straight weeks with no CeeDee Lamb for half that time? Let me just show you my rest of season rankings that I have for Jake Ferguson. I still have him in the same tier as Warren, Kittle, and Bowers. Some people would, I don't think people would put Laporta in that tier. Maybe they would. I have Laporta at 6. But I still am leaning hold for Jake Ferguson. Obviously, everybody is, viewing Ferguson as a top productive tight end right now. So, like, there's no secret there on what his upside is, which is why I don't think we can really call him like a buy because you'll have to buy, tight ends, top 3 tight end level prices, elite level tight end prices for Ferguson if you want to go invest in him now. Nobody's going to sell him low just because CD is coming back healthy. Just because of what his production has been. That being said, I don't necessarily think I would be looking to sell Ferguson if you're an owner of him just because Lamb is coming back healthy, even at price. I don't know if you're going to see like a dramatic decline in production capability in an offense that, again, is going to have to be consistently productive and pass the ball out the butt like crazy every single week if they want to be competitive in these games. I mean, you just saw them lose to Carolina because they don't have a defense. So this volume I would expect to continue even once Lamb is back. Hopefully it opens up the field even more in the shorts and intermediate for him to be a little more explosive with that opportunity, maybe get some more red zone targets as well. So I'm gonna go hold with him.
We need to talk about Xavier Worthy. I'll go hold as well, by the way.
Yeah.
We need to talk about Xavier Worthy here. 10 points in the Detroit game where I thought he was probably going to score more points. In a high-scoring game, he only had 4 targets here. But he had a touchdown, salvaged his day. In the 3 games where he's been back healthy, you got to understand this guy is still playing hurt, even though he's healthy. 17, 11, and 10 points for Xavier Worthy. He's averaging about 70% of the snaps. What's interesting about Xavier Worthy actually is kind of the utilization here, whereas he's not on the field for 90% of the snaps. He is really kind of, they have so many different packages that they do bring him off the field at times. You continue to see guys like Juju Smith-Schuster and Hollywood Brown. They have gotten some consistent target volume as well with Xavier Worthy in the lineup, and it goes to show the elephant in the room here is he is back, ladies and gentlemen. He's back this week. The suspension is over, and he's a wide receiver 1 in fantasy football. Mark my words. And now a lot of people are asking, because the 17, 11, and 10 points is fine production for Xavier Worthy. It's flex-level production. But a lot of people are asking, okay, now that Rashee Rice is back, is Xavier Worthy essentially irrelevant? And the answer is astoundingly no. Now, that can still be true. Xavier Worthy is still going to be relevant, but you'll remember that when I made the Rashee Rice trade on the Flock League channel, that Corey said that Xavier Worthy actually was going to prevent Rashee Rice from being relevant and or being a wide receiver 1. That's a putrid take. There's room in this offense for both of these guys to be productive. Rashee Rice is going to be a wide receiver 1. You can't stop it. Xavier Worthy means nothing for that. Nothing at all. Because they're utilized in entirely different ways. Do keep in mind, I mean, this guy's still getting end around usage almost every single game. But with Worthy, I mean, I think a lot of people are going to be overestimating how much Rashee Rice actually hurts Worthy, whereas even though I don't think Worthy hurts Rice, I think that's dumb. I don't think Rice hurts Worthy either. I don't think you have to cope and say, oh, well, Xavier Worthy, he's going to hurt Rashee Rice because Worthy's that good. No, I think Worthy's still going to be good, and you don't have to diminish what Rice is going to do in the process. So all that to say, if you have Xavier Worthy on your team, I still think you're fine. In fact, I'm going to put him as a hold here because realistically, I think he's a guy that scores in double digits most weeks at this point.
I would go soft buy with the way Mahomes is playing.
I probably would too. Again, I think and Kelsey's also been playing well there. This is an offense with Mahomes, and you're looking at his game log. He's 39, 29, 37, 37, 41, and 30 attempts in these games. He's throwing the ball. He's throwing the ball. And last year, you saw them throw the ball, and the production just necessarily wasn't there for Mahomes, especially at the beginning of the year. But now I think you're seeing it. And I think both of these guys are going to produce. And schematically, they're used in entirely different ways. And I don't think it's going to be one or the other. I think it's going to be Rashee Rice is always good, and Xavier Worthy is less good, but he's still good, and you still flex him. I still think he has touchdown upside every week. I still think he has big play upside every week. I still think he's going to be. In fact, Rice coming back from a schematic standpoint really does help Worthy. Having that guy that is your slot merchant in the middle of the field really does help Xavier Worthy. I'm going soft buy as well. Again, the production has been fine. He's still playing hurt. There's still risk in buying Xavier Worthy because of the injury. But I think he's going to be plenty productive with Rashee Rice. I don't think there's any reason to short one guy or the other because they both can play in the same system and both be productive. So I'll go soft buy for Xavier Worthy as well. But that'll do it for this video. Let us know what other hot topic players you'd like to hear about this week on videos. But do us a huge favor, drop a like on the video. Make sure you're subscribed as well if you play fantasy football. We appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you here soon.